I got 3 DUIs. I've crashed 3 cars. I've lost jobs because of it. This last time before actually being sober now, I almost lost my wife, my family, everything. So it's just, people always talk about the good times, the fun times, the partying, the Vegas trips and all that. And don't get me wrong, like I loved every part of it, but if you'd ask me if I do it again and would I do things differently in my life, yeah, I would. Because who I am now is completely different from the person who I was then. Mm-hmm. And I like who I am now.
Welcome to Exchanging Secrets podcast. I am your host, Karen Macias. With us today is Mindy Silva,
Miguel Faller,
Julie Luna,
and Marie Pinedo.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Miguel is our special guest, and we're so excited for you to hear his story. But before we dive in, we want to remind you to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Exchanging Secrets podcast on our YouTube channel. We also want to thank our wonderful sponsors. First, Alejandra and Luis Font from the Camp Transformation Center. Thank you so much for continuing to sponsor the podcast. Next, we want to thank Ada Reina of Reina Homes. She is a monthly subscriber. You can also do the same. Shannon Laird, who is a great friend of all of ours, also a monthly subscriber. And finally, my mom, Esther Echeverria. Thank you, Mom, so much for supporting us and our vision and all the women and guests who appear here on this podcast. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are the first gentleman on the podcast,
really?
By the way, which is super cool. All the ladies here were so excited for you to come and share your story today. They talked about it being a true inspiration. And so we'd like you to start off where whatever starting point feels right to you in your journey. But we'll let you open up and then we'll just dive in with some questions. Oh, you have a question already?
Because I just wanted to share that we were excited because we knew you before.
Yes.
Through really close friends, family, friends that are family.
Yes.
And we remember, we're talking years ago. We just remember, the Miguel before.
Yeah.
And we just have seen your transformation, and it has been inspiring. When I reached out to you is because I was like, I think your story is
amazing.
Great. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. So, my first question is, if you can describe your life before sobriety.
Before sobriety?
Yes.
Let's see. So my life before sobriety was a total disaster, basically. There's probably countless things I could probably tell you guys about, or stories I could tell you about, as far as what my drinking's done to my life. Yeah, you have the fun parts, the good times with the friends and this and that, but nobody sees the background, or behind the scenes of what happens, other than what they see.
Yeah.
And for me, it's cost me a lot. It's cost me, not necessarily, it hasn't cost me my kids, but it almost got to that point. And I got 3 DUIs. I've crashed 3 cars. I've lost jobs because of it. This last time before actually being sober now, I almost lost my wife, my family, everything. So it's just, people always talk about the good times, the fun times, the partying, the Vegas trips and all that. And don't get me wrong, like I loved every part of it, but if you'd ask me if I do it again and would I do things differently in my life, yeah, I would. Because who I am now is completely different from the person who I was then. Mm-hmm. And I like who I am now, and my family likes me. So
That's important.
Yeah.
There's that relationship now, and before there wasn't. It was the drinking would take over your life. And like I said, there's big things that I have to make up for in my life. And like I said, it has to do with my family, my kids, and, my mom just passed away. But even that, like I said, the drinking took away from all that stuff, and I would lie to people all the time, like about my kids, because I have I always say I have 4 kids. So it's my stepkids and then my kids from my first relationship. With them, it was a little bit, with my kids that are like my blood, right? the relationship it's kind of restrained. It was kind of strained because of the fact of the drinking, and it was always the weekend would come and it's like, oh, I just want to drink. And I would tell people all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm having issues with their mom and she doesn't want me to get them because of this and that. And that was never the truth. The truth was that it was me. And the drinking and the partying and doing this was always overtaking that part of it, and I have to make up for that stuff. The same thing with the relationship with my mom that, that I wish I could take back. I can't. The only thing I can do now is moving forward is make up for it. And that's all I can do.
Yeah.
So, but it's taken a lot out of my life, like I said. And when people think that, oh yeah, drinking doesn't do, if as long as you can do this and that, even if you moderate drink or whatever, at some point, if even one bad decision can cost you something,
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard stories of people that don't really even drink a lot, and they've probably had a couple of drinks at a party or whatever, and next thing you know, some bad accident happened where somebody almost died or somebody did die, and maybe that person wasn't even an alcoholic, but those are the things you get. That's the cost of the fact of drinking sometimes.
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question? And if you're not comfortable, you can tell me. What do you think was the reason behind the drinking? Was it just like fun that got out of control? Was it trying to bury something that,
It was, I can basically kind of pinpoint, and I know because I wasn't a really big drinker up until from when I didn't really start drinking until I was like 22 or 23. Like before that, I wouldn't drink at all. It was when my brother was killed. So my brother was killed, what's it been now? 12, almost going on 12 years.
So sorry.
He got in a fight. It's one of those things that happen, and I seen the drinking, and for some reason it seemed like I was able to handle it, but I think I was kind of maybe hiding the fact because at that time I was actually working out and I was doing good and I was eating right and doing all the right things, and I wasn't really drinking. And after a year though, for some reason it was kind of like a late, I guess in some way like a late reflex,
to your grief.
Yeah, it just like all of a sudden it just hit, and like I was just like, what's going on? Like, why do I feel like this? Why this? And I started knowing like the fact that going out and drinking was just progressing more and more. And then, yeah, it's fun when you're doing it. And when I started doing it, like the first couple of years, like drinking, I seen the progression in the drinking, and it kept getting more and more and more. And it would get to the point where it was like, oh, we're all having fun. We're doing this, we're doing that. To then it was like, oh, you got like really blacked out drunk. It was funny because you don't know what happened, but this is what happened, whatever. But yeah, maybe it was something funny. But then it got from that to like, oh, dude, you got in this fight. This happened. Like, dude, I don't even remember that. Like, what happened? Like, it's things like that. And the fact that when you start blacking out and you don't remember, or the fact that you even drive and you don't even remember how you got home.
Yeah.
That's scary.
And again, probably the reason for my 3 DUIs. So,
yeah. And you mentioned privately, but if you want to talk about it more publicly, you mentioned that drinking led to other types of addiction.
Yeah, so the drinking and the partying and the having fun, like I said, if you let it get out of hand, there's always more ways to have fun. So when the drinking's basically kind of not, well, you know what? It's not even that. It's the fact that you're drinking and you want to be able to keep drinking. So what happens is you turn to something that can probably help you with that part of it. So I started doing Coke, and Coke kind of delays the drunkenness, but it delays it to a certain point, because once you get past a certain point, it doesn't do anything. You just feel this weird high, and you're just completely out of it. You're just like a zombie, And I have there's probably like one story of that, like when I was in Vegas and we were there with friends, and I think it was actually mine and my wife's bachelorette party, because we had it together, and was drinking, doing Coke, this and that. And I remember everybody laughing and like making fun of me or whatever, because it was late at night. It was probably like 3 a.m, and they see me walk in the hallway. And for some reason, I don't know why it would do that to me, but when I would do too much of it or whatever, like it would, I can't explain it, I guess. In some way, it would kind of like make my back hurt in some way. Oh. And so like I would arch my back and I would start walking. So they see me walking through the hallway and they're like, what the hell is this? Like Day of the Dead, like I said, yeah, it's funny, at the time and everything, but I look back at it now and it's just like, no, it's like, dude, like, how did you ever let yourself get like that? You know? And it's just, it's just that whole part, like just, it got to that. Then I remember I got my DUI, and then the fact of getting my DUI, I couldn't drink because I had like an ankle monitor for alcohol. So
wow.
yeah,
Didn't know
so
that
because of the
existed.
fact I couldn't drink, I just started doing coke.
And then it wouldn't pick
And
it up on the
before, yeah, and so the thing, the coke, no, it's just the alcohol.
Wow.
Wow.
So because of the fact I couldn't drink, and before I would only do coke when I would drink.
Right.
But then now I was at this point where I'm like, well, I can't drink. Well, then I'm going to do this, and see how I feel with this. But then I got to the point where it's too much, because then it started, I wasn't really sleeping. I was doing too much. I started basically hallucinating, seeing things. And yeah, like if you guys ever talk to my wife, she has some big story. Like I said, I could probably go all day with this stuff as far as what coke can probably do to you, but it was really bad.
How long have you been sober now?
It's going on 2.5 years.
And what was your breaking point where you're like, okay, enough is enough?
Right.
What was your like?
My breaking point was, I guess I can't really say it was like my breaking point, because I never thought even then I still didn't think I really had a problem. But now, of course, you look at it like, no, dude, you got a big problem. But it was the fact of my wife and my family, my kids, and them talking to me all the time. And I think about it now, and I see like the whole thing of like the arguments and the fights, like with my wife. And every day she'd get home and she'd be at work crying or crying on the way home, because she could already hear on the other end of the line that I was already either drunk or
High or something.
high or whatever. And she would cry, all the time, and she didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until she sat me down, so it was like her mom, my daughter, and then they were kind of talking to me and telling me like, you need to change. If you don't change, we're gonna leave. Like, this is it. But even then, when they were talking to me this and that, like I was still drinking. It was like, you just don't care, and it doesn't matter what anybody tells you, whatever, because you feel like you're above it all, because that's just how drinking makes you feel, like, oh, like I'm fine, and that's what drinking does, and it was one of those things that it didn't matter, and then so that was one part of it, though, that kind of in some way, I guess, put something in my head that I need to change. And then, but I was like, still like, no, I'm not going to change. Like, I'm fine. I don't have a problem. And then my friend Omar and his brother, my friend Lex, his brother, and they came to the house, and I hadn't talked to Omar in it had been a couple of years. We had a falling out, and you have to be able to forgive certain things in your life to be able to move on.
Yes.
And they say there's strength in forgiveness.
Yeah.
And and it wasn't even a big thing. It was just something that we both, I felt my way and he felt his way. But at the end of the day, he was there, when it mattered. And they came to the house and they were talking to me and making little jokes here and there. But I mean, the fact of them coming over was to talk about, my drinking, and like, dude, like, you're like, what are you doing? Like, you're killing yourself. And it's like, nah, like, I'm fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. They're like, dude, look at you. Like, you're wasting away. You're not eating. McCurtain sounds, you're not eating. You're just drinking, doing drugs. Like, bro, like, what are you doing? And you keep telling yourself like, nah, like, she has a problem. I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong with me, and they're like, you need to go to rehab, dude. And I was still like, no, I'm not going to go, this and that. And for some reason, I thought my wife was trying to set me up on some type of a rehab thing, because I ended up getting papers from my job that came through or whatever. And there were papers for taking a leave of absence for FMLA. So they kind of had a hint of what was going on.
Yeah.
And to go through the process, they had to take the right steps, because they couldn't just get rid of me. So I thought it was Macrina who had my wife. I thought she had talked to them or something, because like I said, again, the drugs make you think all this crazy stuff. And I thought it was her. She had some discussion with them and they were setting me up for whatever. And I was like, no, this is all you're doing, this and that. Like, no, like, you need to realize what you're doing, Miguel, and you need to change your life. So I was like, fine, you know what? To make you happy, I'll go to rehab. And so it was that, and it was the fact of the intervention. Like I said, and the one thing, like I was telling Karen, was, I was sitting there with my mother-in-law and my wife and my daughter, and she told me one day, because she works with people that are addicts, and she told me, she's all like, I see what this stuff does to people all the time. She's like, and if you don't change, like, the day you die or whatever, I'm not going to your funeral, and it kind of hit. It was just kind of like, damn. It's like, all right, well, but like I said, when you're drunk or high, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just you're like, okay, well, then if you don't go, then you don't go.
Right.
It's not going to hurt me.
If you're
you don't
numb
go.
to all of
Like,
it.
yeah, you're like, I'm dead, so it doesn't matter, you know?
Mhm.
But then you look back at those conversations, you look back at them and you're like, dude, like, what were you talking about? Why would you say that? Why would you do this? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so I went to rehab, and
What year was that you entered into rehab?
that was 2023 or 22. 22, I believe.
Almost
October.
3 years, 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, 2.5. So yeah, I went into rehab, and then I tell people all the time, because people ask me all the time, like, oh, so you finally went to rehab, that's what helped you, you know? And it did in one part, you know, but like I tell people all the time, and I tell everybody I meet, that I think what really helped me was the fact of praying to God. And like being in a room, like I was saying earlier, you're in a room by yourself, no TV, no phone, no music, no nothing. You're in there by yourself, you know, with your thoughts, and that's all you have. And at that time, you usually have a roommate with you. But since I was there, it was my first day there. I didn't have anybody in my room for like 2 or 3 days. So I remember being there the second day, and I was like, dude, like, this is how bad it's gotten already. It's like, dude, look at where you're at. I'm like, I never thought I'd be in a place like that, you know? And I'm like, I'm looking at other people there, and I'm like, there's people that were like way, way worse than I was. But still, you're thinking back, and you're like, dude, like, how did you get to this point?
Mhm.
You know? And I remember just sitting there and for the first time actually praying, you know, on the bed in the dark, praying and telling God, you know, like, if you help me get through this, I promise I'll go to church. I promise I'll read the Bible. I promise, you know, I'll do better in my life. I'll treat everybody better, you know, and this and that. And when I got out of rehab, I was there for about 2 weeks. I got out of rehab, and they told me, you know, you need to go in AA. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I was like, okay, I'll find groups or whatever. But none of the groups worked with my schedule. So I was like, well, if you guys find me one that I can go to, then I'll go to whichever one I have to go, because I felt like maybe I did need it. But every time they kept calling me every week, they were like, oh, well, there's one at this time. I'm like, I can't do that. I work from 5 o'clock in the morning up until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. And they're all like, okay, well, we'll keep looking, but make sure you stay on the sober track, you know, this and that. I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, what are you still doing? I'm like, well, I started going to church. And at first it was kind of weird for me to go to church, because I hadn't been there since, I hadn't been to church since I did my first communion when I was a Catholic. Now I feel like for me, being a Christian is more my thing than being a Catholic. And I hadn't been to church, so at first it was kind of, you know, you kind of take it as kind of weird, and you're kind of like, oh, like I don't know.
I don't know about these people.
Yeah, like kind of like, I don't know if I could do this, like, you know,
Yeah.
the singing and this and that, and
Worship, love it.
you know, and it's like I don't know. I'm like, I don't know if this is for me. And I went the first week, and then I was like, no, I made a promise, you know, and I went again the next week and the next week after, and then I would tell my wife, I'm like, do you want to go to church? And at first she'd be like, oh, I'll probably go with you next time, you know, and it kept being next time. So it wasn't until, but I would just always ask her, but I never pushed it on her. And it wasn't until maybe I kept praying and saying, like, you know, I would want her to go to church. And probably, I think it was maybe about 2 months until she finally decided. Like, I was getting ready, and then I didn't really even ask her, and she was already up getting ready. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm getting ready to go to church. I'm like, oh, I'm like, you're going to go? I'm like, all right. Well, I'm like, let's go. And I remember the first time she went, though, I guess she kind of seen it like mine, because she was used to going to Catholic church also.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, so she was kind of like, you know,
What do
the
I do?
singing
Do I
and the
kneel?
music,
Do I
you know.
not? Do I
She was like, yeah. And I remember looking at her sometimes, and she's like, there was a question one time. She's like, well, you know, I'm going because of you. You know, I'm going for you. You know, this and that. And I'm like, I don't like. One of those things was like, I don't need you to go for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm getting. I really believed I was getting what I needed from church.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, I don't need you to go for me. I go, I need you to go for yourself. I go, and if you don't feel like going for yourself, then then you're never really going to feel. And I tell people all this time, you're never going to feel that peace. That's, you know, you should. So I tell people all the time, there's a peace I have in my heart all the time now from going to church and everything. And like I tell people all the time, you go there and you can have whatever problem or whatever that's bothering you, and you can go to church, and for some reason, something starts to speak to you of, you know, what the sermon is and this and that. And when you come out of there like
Refreshed.
refreshed.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's the word. Like a weight lifted off your
Yes.
shoulders. Like nothing can bother you. Whatever problem you were going through, like, I'll handle that tomorrow. I got it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way I started feeling. So I liked having that feeling, you know, and whatever came, across my path day to day, I was able to take on. Like, it didn't matter. Like, work used to stress me out before, this and that, and it just became less stressing, less problems, just more calm, less angry, less everything. I think if you guys were to ask my wife too, like, our arguments before were really bad, like because of the drinking and everything, and they were there was physical fights, and like I said, there's things I got to make up for, and there was um those are it's weird because it's ever since the whole church and me changing the way I'm trying to live my life, like I don't cuss at her, I don't yell at her. I can't even really remember the last fight we've had, and the arguments before were like
Explosive.
yeah, you cuss at me, I'm gonna cuss at you, this and that. It's like, dude, now
No
it's kind of like,
respect.
yeah, exactly. And that's where we kind of lost that. And now we have that respect. Because now, like, if I kind of raise my voice a little bit because I'm like kind of irritated at something, but I'm not even raising my voice. I'm like, really? And she'll be like, "Really? You're gonna like yell at me?" I'm like,
You're like, oh no.
I'm like, all
It's
right.
like she got herself a new husband. They night and day now.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of hard for her to take like the transition because she wanted, I think some part of her thought like because we didn't really argue, like I didn't care.
Mhm.
And if we want to sit and we want to discuss something, or like, so now my discussions with her start as like, I want to tell you something, but I don't want you to get mad.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it might have to do with the kids because she's real defensive. Like any mom, they're defensive about their kids.
Mama
So-
bear.
Exactly. So
Don't-
now
Don't tell her.
they're defensive, and I think that's any woman, and like I tell them, like, look, I'm gonna tell you something, but I don't want you to get mad, and she's like, okay, what is it? And I'll tell her and she'll be like, no, I get what you're saying.
It's amazing. What made you decide to share your testimony public? I mean, in the church, but also on social media. I noticed you had this really big following, and my husband, he mentioned he even recalled the time where you shared your testimony, and it was so moving and so powerful. I mean, I think some, right, not all, but some can sort of carry that cross with shame. Right. I think we know, right, those who have read our word and sort of like ingrained it in our heart know that truth sets you free. But what was that moment where you said, like, I want to be able to share this testimony with the world, and, how'd that get started?
At first, it was kind of like for myself to know that where I'm at from where I came from, and but then it became one of those things where it's like, there's, like they say, there's truth in your testimony of what you say. So it's like, I believe, God has us do certain things, and like I've said before, I believe he does things on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
And I believe my purpose is to put my story out there to show people that, when they believe they can't do something, or they can't stop drinking, or they can't stop doing drugs or whatever. I was so far gone, that you can probably talk to anybody. The people that are probably closest to me can tell you all the stories. And they knew it was at one point where it was fun to the point where it was like, dude, like you completely lost it, bro. Like you're gone. And I have a lot of people who DM me and stuff on Instagram and stuff like that. And they tell me all the time, like, dude, like keep going, keep going strong, this and that. Like you're an inspiration to a lot of people, this and that. And I kind of keep that with me, and I tell people all the time, it's just I don't want to let my family down anymore. And one of the biggest things is like, I ask God's help, and I don't want to let him down no more,
Mhm.
because I believe he brought me, like I tell people all the time, if you want to see what the devil could do to your life, just get to that point of the drinking and the drugs and live that life of like what people say, that worldly life,
Yeah, walk with the
and you start seeing things. And like I tell people all the time, like, you want to see demons, bro? I'll start doing coke. Like I was doing coke. You start seeing things that you look back at now, you're like,
Wow.
dude, like what the hell was I
Speechless.
thinking? So I can say one quick thing about
Yes.
that, because
Yeah.
so when I was so far gone, this is one thing that it's kind of like it's instilled in the back of my head, and it kind of like hurts sometimes because Angel caught me in the garage one time, like literally like having a full blown conversation with like me thinking of who I thought it was, like somebody being there, but there was nobody there, and he recorded it, and I remember that thing about it, like me having that conversation with somebody. And I remember it was like a conversation, and for some reason, I can still remember this day that for some reason, it seemed like I was having a conversation with my wife, like arguing with her. And for some reason, it was about her cheating or whatever. And like, I'm literally having this full blown conversation, argument with nobody there.
Wow.
You know, I was literally looking at the bench, like talking. And then he called Macrina, and then Macrina came outside and she's like, Miguel. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I looked at her and I was like, I was talking to myself, huh? She's like, yeah. I was like, so I kind of look at that right now, and I'm like, I look at that all the time, and I kind of see it. So now, like I tell the people all the time, like I try to live my life. I want to live my life, and I try to live my life to where I want my kids to be proud of me. You know, and I want my family to be proud of me. I want my friends to be proud of me. And there's this thing like on Instagram I see one time. They're like, live your life like you would want to live it like in a movie. You know, like to be your kid's hero. You know, and I don't want them to look at me as that person that used to just get drunk in the garage and
Right.
not do anything the next day. And my binges would literally go for like a week, you know, being in the garage struck. And then my kids and everybody knew me as the fact of like, you know, like, oh, there's dad in the garage drunk. They'd bring friends over, like, oh yeah, he's probably there drinking, you know, and it gets like, to me, it gets to me now because it's just like, it's like, dude, how'd you let your life get so bad? You know, and there was a little bit, like I said, with my mom passing away, because my mom passed away in November, the day after Thanksgiving. And the biggest thing I had talking to my mom was I asked for forgiveness, you know, because she was already basically dying, you know, and because she had cancer. And it's one of those things where, of course, you start thinking of all the bad things that you did or the things that you should have done that you never did. And like I said, I seen what the drinking did and what it took away from me, you know, and it took away me spending time with my mom and all that stuff, you know. And I tried to be there towards the end, but you should want to be there like all the time, you know, not just when someone's almost gone, you know. And I asked her for forgiveness, you know, and I told her I was sorry. She's all like, she's all, Mijo, I don't have to forgive you for anything. She's all like, you know, I know you're always busy. You're always this, you're always that, you know? And I'm like, nah, you should never be too busy, you know? And she's all like, the only thing I don't want, she's like, is I don't want you to go back to the way you were when your brother passed away and turn to the drinking, turn to this, turn to that. So, you know, she's like, you're different. She's like, and you're meant to be who you are now, you know? And my biggest thing now is like, I deal with my grief as far as my mom, because I was wrestling with my faith after my mom passed. Because of course everybody has those questions in their head. Why my mom? Why not me? I'm the one that did all the bad stuff. My mom never did. My mom didn't drink. My mom didn't smoke. My mom didn't do anything. My mom never even went out. She wouldn't do anything, you know, and it's, you know, why her? Why this? You know, we try to ask the questions of God, like, you know, like I need to understand, I need to know. So that was me wrestling with my faith, you know, but God does what he does for a reason. And I won't really know what that reason is until the day I go up there myself. And there's times I was wrestling with my faith though. And there's times where I thought like, dude, should I just drink? But, you know, you think back and you look and it's just like, no, like I have, that's not what my mom would want, you know? And my biggest thing now is I want to make her proud, you know? And I always tell this, I've always kind of said this thing. It's like, I want to make enough noise down here that she'll hear it up there, you know? So,
Well,
yeah.
you got a second chance.
Yeah.
I know.
And yeah, and like, that's why I tell people all the time, like there's second chances and, you know, there's like a saying, right? That your second life can basically start at any point. And, you know, you can never be too old. Yeah. You can never be too old or you can never be too late to start a new life. And I believe my life started when, you know, 2 years ago.
There's a post that you recently posted. I love it. It said something along the lines of, don't judge my past. I don't live there anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like,
That was it's written, I'm trying to remember. It's written by somebody. But yeah, so there's there's times where there's certain quotes and certain things that kind of stick with me, and that's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah.
It's like, don't judge me by my past because I don't live there no more.
That's not
You know, I've had people kind of dig at me for who I was before. You know, there's some friends that I can't really call them really friends, but they were more like acquaintances and stuff like that who sometimes would like throw digs at me, you know, and they're like, oh, like you can't change, you know, you can't change who you are. Like I know the real you. I know what you're about. I know this and that because you know me from this age to what I was then. I go the drinking, the drugs, the this and that. And yeah, I used to like to party. I used to like to have fun. I used to like going to the bars, the clubs, and everything, which a lot of people do, you know. But for me, it was living the fast life and doing it too fast, you know. And I get those digs sometimes where they're like, oh, you're just a hypocrite, you know. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, I go, what part of what I do or what I'm doing now is a hypocrite, you know? I go, I pretty much do what I say I'm going to do now. You know, it's like if I'm saying I'm at church or I'm going to church, that's because that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
If I say I'm at Bible study or doing this, that's because that's what I'm doing. You know, like I live my life a different way now, and it's changed every aspect of my life. You know, from being healthier to my work to my family to whatever. So I mean, like I tell people all the time, maybe there's a lot of different things that work for different people. What worked for me was God, and I believe everything that I owe and what I am is to God.
Amen.
You know, and he, you know, he put me on firm. Like they said, it says in the Bible, right? He put me on firm foundation,
Yes.
and where I stand out now, I feel like I can't be taken down. You know, and I feel sometimes I have digs at me sometimes, and sometimes you might feel that the devil's attacking or whatever. When I tell people sometimes people that don't really go to church, they're like, "Oh, you really believe in the devil?"
They don't get it.
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, because there's a presence there. I go,
Absolutely.
you have a good presence and you have a bad presence. And like I tell people all the time, you know, it's like I said in my testimony one time, you have, God's always going to help people, you know, and he's always there, you know, and there's always two roads to take, you know, there's the good road and then there's the bad road. And then this one might be easier because it's the bad road and it might be easier and it might lead to something good at that time. But the one that's actually worthwhile and the best and the one that you're probably gonna get the most out of is probably the hardest road to take.
Yeah.
But it's at the end of the day or at the end of whatever that journey is, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Wow. This has been incredibly inspiring.
Yes.
So I hope that your story today will get to inspire more people than you've already inspired. And we just want to thank you and bless you and, you know, pray favor over you and your family all the days of your life.
I'm so proud of you.
I
Yes.
know, super
Yes.
proud of you. You've come a long way.
It's been a long, long way.
Yes.
Like I tell people all the time, like I've said, people don't believe sometimes, but like I said, give your problems and give whatever you have, give them to God.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Trust.
swear he will help you through. He will. Like I said, because if he could change my life, like I said, from almost losing everything to gaining everything back to where my career is at with my life and how you can go from hating your job. Like, how do you go from hating your job to like loving your job?
Yeah.
You know, and I tell that people like, yeah, do I get irritated? Yeah, I get irritated. I think anybody gets irritated at their job, you know, but I like what I do. I love what I do. I like having to figure out problems and I try to be better every time at it, you know, and like I tell everybody all the time, there's a peace in my heart and there's a gratitude I give to God every time, you know, and so when I drive home sometimes, like I've told people before, I drive home sometimes, I'm like, have you ever just driven home and like kind of looked out the window of your windshield and you're just driving and looking up and you kind of tear up. You kind of tear up because I see where I'm at now to where I was at before. And it's just a tear and it's like a peace in my heart that I try to explain to people. Like, if I could give you this piece of what I have, I go, I would. I go, but I can't explain it. I go, you just have to like feel it, you know, and the gratitude and the tearing up of the fact of when I drive home, sometimes it's like looking up and it's just like, God, like, thank you.
It's like you have a different perspective in life now than what you did before, you know? Before it was like negative drinking, the drugs, and now it's like you take nothing for granted.
Yep.
Yeah. Even his timing, because it's like he prepared you at the right time for this transformation. Because imagine you were the Miguel before and your mom passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been worse.
You wouldn't have this strength,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, that's like how I said, like the reasons of certain things, you know,
Yeah.
and God's timing.
Yeah. The
And
timing.
people pray and people want things like at certain times, you know, or that maybe they, like I tell people all the time, like sometimes, you know, it's harder to know how to pray sometimes, but people want to pray sometimes and they want to be like, God, let me win the lottery, you know? So it'd be nice, you know, it'd be nice to do that, you know, but like I tell people all the time now, like that's probably the same aspect I used to have before, you know, like thinking like, oh, I need you to fix this. Please, God, fix this. You know?
Right.
And I tell people all the time, like, if you ask for certain things and you pray for certain things in your life and you pray for strength, wisdom, this and that, understand that like I tell people all the time,
Give you.
understand that when you're praying for that stuff, he's not just going to give it to you
Right.
like that.
Mhm.
He's going to put you,
Trials.
he's going to put you through that
Yeah.
trial.
Trials, Vicky.
Like they say, he's going to put you through the mud to get that
Yes.
strength. He's going to put you through all the things.
That's what you're asking for.
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to put you through all the things that you thought you couldn't handle and you think you can't handle at that time because it's too much. But it's like you ask for wisdom, right? This is how you're going to get it. You know, and that I believe I take every part of that in my life. Like, so when I get irritated at things and I'm like, dude, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I think I'm like, no, you prayed for this. You wanted this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so I have to look at life that way each and every day. You know, and I tell people the same thing, like, look at it that way. Like, sometimes you feel it's bad, right? But did you pray yesterday? Yeah. What did you pray for? Well, I prayed for strength. I'm like, then you have to go through the mud first.
Mm-hmm.
So understand that,
Mhm.
you know, and I tell it to people all the time.
Yeah, well,
Crazy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, for always, right? For all of our time together. It's a joy. Thank you, Miguel, for
Thank you for
being
sharing.
here.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing, amazing story.
Yes, remember to like, comment, share, subscribe to Exchanging Secrets on YouTube. Thank you to all our sponsors. Love you guys.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you, friends, for joining us. Tune in each week as we give you an intimate window into our decades of friendship and exchange secrets on how we are striving to successfully navigate life's challenges. Remember to like and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and other podcast platforms. The content in our podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, financial, or other professional advice. Please consult with a professional for specific advice tailored to your situation. The views and opinions expressed by our guests and sponsors are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Tell Me Your Secret, LLC.